I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. Stop agreeing with yourself. Stop agreeing with yourself.
Hello and welcome to Glass Half Full Reviews. And boy howdy do I love to laugh. Today I'm going to be reviewing They Came Together. So, They Came Together is from writer-director David Wayne, best known for the cult classic Wet Hot American Summer. A lot of those guys come back again, especially the main characters, who are played by Paul Rudd and Amy Poehler. Now, it's funny because, you think about different kinds of movies that are out there that have a very specific genre that have had a parody. And romantic comedies have certainly had a few here and there. For example, the execrable and horrendous date movie, probably the worst movie I've ever seen, was essentially, ostensibly kind of a parody of romantic comedies. Of course, it was actually terrible and not funny at all, so it didn't really work. Now, They Came Together, though, it does work. This movie is hilarious. So, basically, you don't really need to know a lot of the specifics, but every cliche you can ever imagine is in this movie. So you start with Paul Rudd and Amy Poehler, both playing, a guy and a girl. Amy Poehler, basically, she runs this little candy shop. She's literally giving away candy for free, and she also donates to charity, and the store is nonprofit. It makes no sense. It's sort of like a You've Got Mail idea, except, made fun of even more. And Paul Rudd works for a giant, multinational candy corporation, obviously. Blah, blah, blah. They have meet cute, and suddenly they start going through all the exact beats that you would expect from a romantic comedy, except everything is exaggerated and pointed out at a very meta level. It's like, oh, see, this is another example of the movie. It all starts essentially with the two of them sitting in a restaurant talking to two friends, played by Ellie Kemper and Bill Hader, who are very, very talented people also. And this rapper really works. So from what I understand, originally they didn't have that. They just had the movie start up straight and just told the story. But this really works because they can keep cutting back and having great reactions. And Bill Hader is just so talented. One of the most talented people ever to be on Saturday Night Live. And he's great here also. I mean, Ellie Kemper is very talented too. I don't want to put any indications to say that I don't think she's good. It's just that Bill Hader is sort of like in another class from everybody. So, that's just how it is. But anyway, the important thing is that everything you could ever imagine that has ever happened in any romantic comedy is made fun of here in some way. There are plenty that I caught. I am sure there are plenty I missed. I think I looked on BuzzFeed afterwards to see, oh yeah, okay, there's that, oh, there's a lot of these. And I didn't even realize that, that was from that stupid movie, like a lot of these are. I mean, Paul Rudd is basically playing like a Paul Rudd archetype, and, Amy Poehler is kind of playing the sort of the ditzy, clumsy girl, and everything is played to extremes. I could talk for a long time about all the different tropes and cliches here. No, I don't want to waste your time with that kind of thing, that kind of analysis, but I will say, for the most part, this movie works really well. So I'm going to get into what doesn't quite work when I get into my 5-point breakdown.
5-point breakdown.
So, basically, acting-wise, I would say almost 100% good here. Paul Rudd, Amy Poehler, playing these characters basically straight, but responding to ridiculous things and saying ridiculous things. It's in the spirit of classic spoof parodies like Naked Gun or Airplane, where they're reacting so straight to the ridiculous situations that it works. The problem with some of these spoofs is that you have everyone like mugging for the camera. This was a real problem with a lot of the scary movies, and especially some of their knockoffs, is that you just had references. And it wasn't funny contextually, and everyone was just doing so much of the to the camera that it just sort of lost any impact. It's not unfortunate, but there's not really much you can do about that after the fact anyway. Here, people were playing it so straight that you couldn't help but just laugh so much. There were definitely some parts which were just absurdist, by which I mean they weren't really like a classic punchline. It was just like, oh, wow, they're just building on this nonsensical thing, and it just keeps building on it to the point where you can't help but laugh. It works really well. So I didn't think Colby Smulders, who plays an ex of Paul Rudd's character, was the best. She was a little wooden at times. And it's not to say she's necessarily a bad actress. I like a lot of her work in, say, the Captain America 2 movie and a lot of the stuff on How I Met Your Mother. Just here, maybe it was the way her role was written, just didn't work as well. And there are a few other things that, there was an entire subplot, well, I'll get into that in a second. But in general, though, two main leads, great. A lot of the supporting characters, they were also very good. And just about everyone here were like little, another cameo. I don't even ruin it, because this is all available on demand right now. So I know you're not going to be able to see it in the theater, but I would say definitely try to watch this on demand if you can. So that brings us to number 2. So of course, like I was saying, the story is exceptionally typical. It's exceptionally cliche. That's the point. However, there are a few subplots that don't quite work. There's like a weird, incestuous little scene with Paul Rudd's character and his grandmother that I just thought, I got what they were trying to do. It just didn't work. It wasn't funny. And there was another whole thing that had a really extended, kind of scatological joke, which only had a decent payoff later, but for the most part, it just seemed like it went on too long. It was out of place. Pushed that line of absurdism to just be not as interesting. So I wasn't such a fan of that. But otherwise, the story is just so stupid, but the lines are written so hilariously. Not every line is a winner, but such a huge percentage works. I mean, I was laughing for such a high percentage of the time. I can't help but to say that it works from that perspective. Let's move on to number 3. So the way everything works here is it's very similar, it's very typical, and I wouldn't want to put it down for that. It's supposedly in New York, although obviously, and they make a joke about it, it's not filmed mostly in New York at all. So it just has a bright, colorful feel, the same way you have a lot of these romantic comedies. I think what works, though, is the editing for the jokes. That it's just, it's kind of a critical thing. That part, I think, works really well. And without that, you'd have a lot of failures in terms of the humor. So from that perspective, I would say it works very well. Which brings us to number 4. And, I just had a great time. I had a blast watching this movie. It worked really well from that perspective. Just had such a good time. So I have to say, from that perspective, it was good. It was fun. What else is there to say? How about number 5? I don't expect this movie to have any box office records. It hasn't even done that well so far. It had a very short, limited run in the theaters. It's mostly available on demand. I think that's how most people have seen it. David Wayne, the director, he's going to have more work. It's not going to be the last thing. He had this movie, The 10, which I thought was decent enough, and that didn't have a wide distribution at all. So, I'm not expecting anything major. He has a lot of famous friends who are all very talented. He writes very funny material. He'll get more chances. Yeah, there was last year's Wanderlust, or it was 2 years ago, and I thought that was, Paul Rudd was pretty good in that, but in general, that was a little bit of a disappointing movie. But I am sure that David Wayne's going to get more chances. He's a talented filmmaker. So that's my feeling about it. And do I recommend this movie? My feeling is, if you like any romantic comedies or you like making fun of them, you need to see this movie because it's hilarious. If you don't like either one of those things, it's probably not quite your style. And that's really how I would break it down. Thanks for stopping by.